Remember that radiation exposure to the human body causes ionization. Ionization is the process through which radiation photons interact with orbital electrons, causing the electrons to be ejected out of the atom. The result of this interaction is a negatively charged electron and a positively charged atom, both of which can cause additional interactions and damage in surrounding molecules. Ionization is the chief cause of biological damage. Remember, the body is made of organs, organs are made of tissues, tissues are made of cells, and cells are composed of numerous subcellular structures, all of which are composed of molecules held together by chemical bonds. Ionization from radiation can break these chemical bonds, which has the effect of damaging important molecules in the body. Lipids, proteins, carbohydrates, and numerous other macromolecules can all be affected and even destroyed by ionization. Fortunately, this typically results in only non-lethal damage that can be repaired by the cell. The cell does not die, the tissue is unchanged, there are no mutations, and the organism goes on without any lasting consequences. Damage to DNA is much more important and much more deadly. DNA is designed with multiple mechanisms of protection and repair, but sometimes radiation can overwhelm or disable these mechanisms. The result is incomplete repair leading to cell death or cell mutation. So how exactly is DNA damaged by radiation? DNA damage occurs by two distinct mechanisms, the direct action and the indirect action. In the case of the direct action, the X-ray photon itself or an electron ionized by the photon interacts directly with the DNA molecule. This type of interaction is extremely uncommon. DNA itself represents only 1% of the mass of the cell, so it's very unlikely that the photon or a free electron would strike the DNA directly. In the case of the indirect action, the initial interaction is with water in the cell. Ionization of water is also called radiolysis because the molecule is broken apart into two ions or charged particles, a negatively charged hydroxyl ion and a positively charged hydrogen ion. These ions can transform into free radicals and often into hydrogen peroxide molecules, all of which can instigate damage in the DNA. The indirect action is more often the cause of DNA damage because the cell is nearly 80% water. So what happens when DNA is damaged by radiation? Whether by the direct action or the indirect action, the effects are similar. The most common effect is small base pair lesions, which are easily repaired by the cell. Another common effect is single strand breaks, which are usually repaired without negative effects. The least common but most important effect is a double strand break. Double strand breaks are the least common DNA lesion, but they are by far the most significant. Double strand breaks are more difficult to repair, and they tend to result in a higher proportion of unrepaired or misrepaired genetic information because the DNA strand is broken completely apart. Double strand breaks are the most common DNA injury that are responsible for things like cell death, carcinogenesis, and mutations. Most DNA damage, including double strand breaks, is caused by the indirect action of radiation, where the X-ray photon first ionizes water molecules. Only a small percentage of DNA damage is caused by photons or ionized electrons interacting directly with the DNA molecule. The direct and indirect effects of radiation could be compared to lightning striking a house in the woods. As the thunderstorm passes over the house and the woods, it's possible that lightning could strike and damage the house directly, but that's very unlikely. There's many more trees than there is the house. This is like the direct action of DNA damage. What's more probable is that the lightning strikes one of the surrounding trees, which then starts a fire that eventually causes damage to the house. The lightning caused the damage, but it did so indirectly. This is just like the indirect action of DNA damage.